Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Walter. It's always a pleasure to see you and all my friends out there. Thank you guys for coming. Now, Jerry and Chris Tish are in the house, so now I'm really nervous about reading my stuff. I'm kidding. Also, I just want to mention, because I'll be swigging from this is not a bottle of Jack Daniels. Sometimes people have said, "Are you drinking Jack Daniels?" And no, I don't drink. So anyway, the memoir is, I'm finishing the draft of it, sort of prepping it in the near future, hopefully for publication. It's entitled Hound Dog, a poet's memoir of rock revolution and redemption. And basically, it's going to be not a super thick memoir. I'd like it to be like as short as a Woody Allen movie, 80 minutes or so per se, because I might get bored too with it. So it's in about 10 or 11 chapters. And the way that I sort of constructed the book is by titling each chapter after a musical, either influence and or friend, and then using that as a springboard to talk about whatever the section is about. So the first chapter, and this record that's behind me is actually a big part of the story, especially chapter 1, which is called Elvis. And that's the story about how my grandmother, maybe that's what happened to me, Walter. My grandmother turned me on to Elvis when I was 4 and changed my life. So thank you, Grandma. And Grandma appears quite a bit in the memoir, a little bit today in the section I'm going to share. So there's Elvis, Beatles, Dylan, and then folks that I've recorded or worked with, Al Cooper and Country Joe, and it ends with a chapter on Eminem. And I'll just say this: the first line is, "I never met him, but ... You can fill in the rest there. But it's really a chapter about working out of that studio and with Steve King, the great late producer of Eminem's material. So I'm going to share a section. This is a kind of a typical section. It seems longer to me, but it's only really 8 pages, double space. So it was a story from the past that I fine-tuned for the memoir, which any story that I've done has been about my own life, my own experiences. This one is called Neil Young, tentatively. I was in a workshop in Massachusetts, or in Maine, over the last semester, and one of the younger people in the memoir, after reading this piece, asked me which kid was Neil Young. Now that may just mean it's a younger audience there, but Neil Young is not in the story, I'm sorry to say, other than something that he's connected to. So it's called Neil Young, and the epigraph is "Tin Soldiers and Nixon's Coming." After the invasion of Cambodia, I gave up baseball for a few years. I somewhat regret that now because I love the game so much, but I could no longer support anything American after that. The 60s were rough on us all, from the older neighborhood boys who were asked to serve in Vietnam to the kids in the baseball fields and mudlots of America. Sacrifices were made by all in one way or another. In a way, it was my cultural sacrifice, not the kind of sugar and gas that our parents and grandparents were familiar with. For me, American ways and traditions had to go. Cambodia and Kent State was the end, the limit, the close of my youth. I gave up apple pie, baseball, but I couldn't give up Grandma. I wanted to, but she had made such a strong impression on me with her constant reminder to give her a kiss before I left the house, because she was older and might not be there alive when I came back. My God, after hearing this throughout my childhood, I couldn't toss her out with the mitt and hostess fruit pies, not without worrying about carrying her death on my shoulders late into my midlife when I should be filled with other problems and other crises, like my hair turning gray, falling out, my wife ending menstruation and bitching at me. Will both have hot flashes, and damn it, I will also have my grandmother's ghost screaming at me, "You SOB," her favorite initials. "You gave me up with baseball and hostess fruit pies. I told you to always kiss me before you left the house. But this damn Nixon and his Cambodian deal, you son of a bitch, you stopped. And understand this, young man, your grandfather is upset too." I guessed he would be. Who would pull him around by that ring in his nose? Well, I couldn't live with that, so I kept grandma close, and I still do. But this story is only partially about that. It really is about life after Cambodia and Kent State. This is a story about hippie days and baseball. Before the hippies, there was only baseball, lots of it. Baseball from morning till dusk. If there was enough light to see that little round, usually electrical taped mass, there was baseball. I remember days so hot that the grasshoppers would fry when they leapt upon the piece of old car hood we used as a backstop, but we still played baseball. Once we played for so long in the hot sun that I was sick for a week. But the whole week I dreamt about Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Al Kaline, Willie Mays, and Hank Gary. My grandmother kept me in a dark room with a fan blowing. She said her brother Andy once had sunstroke from too much baseball and hot sun. I laid in bed, worried, sick, wondering if what my great grandpa died from was a sunstroke or a heart attack. I'd heard both things mentioned in the same breath with my dead great grandfather's name. After the sun left my brain, as my grandma put it, I was back in the field playing baseball. Now, this was all several years before I played in the school league and illegally in the Catholic Little League because I wasn't Catholic at the time. I even started going back to the Lutheran church to play in their church league. Now, I want to say this at this point, that what we played was hardball. We took a hell of a lot of pride in playing anything with the word hard in it. We were giggly kids, and hardball meant something more exciting than softball. Hardballs were what we played with. Those sissy kids, square kids, played softball. This was Kenny Ensroth's favorite joke. I promised him I would use it in a story if I became a writer. I'm a writer. That's for you, Kenny. Now, this point might seem minor, but really it was the beginning of the division between the cool kid baseball players and the goofy kid baseball players. This was also representative of the division that was taking place in the country, and some people think that life is not symbolic. That's from my college professor who said I didn't know a symbol from a tit. I told him that if I ever became a writer, I'd expose his ass in a story. I'm a writer, you're exposed. Anyway, the division probably became more noticeable when we started selling records, stealing records from the local SS Kresge store. We figured that there were all kinds of groovy records by Hendrix and Cream, Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, and these guys running the store didn't know shit about new hip culture. So we figured it was better for us to have them than for the capitalist pigs to sell them. We just started hearing about this capitalism and the mess it had created from the new underground radio station. It didn't sound cool. The radio was always talking about capitalism and the older folks' generation. Well, I had a whole family of sorry ass people to prove that it must be a sick system, from Uncle Andy to Aunt Harriet. My family, I hope they don't sue me when the book comes out. My family was a bunch of a sorry ass group. I wanted their love. They gave me their money. I understood the underground message, so we kept ripping the dime store off. We listened to these new records while the other kids, the softball kids, listened to watered down mid-60s British invasion, kind of like Do the Freddy and stuff. That figured. A day late and a dollar short. That was my grandma used to whisper about some of those kids. She also, in hushed tones, because she was friends with their parents, told me if I ever mentioned this in public, she'd tear my heart out because I'd break hers. What she meant was that she would be embarrassed because she had made public her innermost feelings. I learned about this shit too after Kent State. Anyway, the division began then and spread throughout the 60s. In early spring of 1970, between the last Jimi Hendrix album, appropriately titled Cry of Love, the last Cream record, appropriately titled Goodbye, and spring training, several of us happened upon the softball kids in a mudlot across from a field where we smoked most of our pot. Maybe we were smoking that day, maybe not. That's a documented side effect from hemp. But there they were, and there we were, standing in the warm spring air with wide bell-bottoms, Levi jackets with patches sewn on that proclaimed things like Woodstock, peace, power to the people, and everybody had one of those little Rolling Stone lip and tongue patches sewn on. So we walked up to these kids and we asked them if they'd like to play a game of ball. These short-haired, yellow-bellied sons of Tricky Dicky, as Lennon called their type, just smirked. And the pudgy one, whose hair was as short as mine was long, said, "With you guys, we'd kill you." And by all logical reasoning, they should have. We smoked too much dope, read too much Che, listened to too much Morrison, and tried too much to get in touch with our spiritual selves through modern chemistry to win a simple game of baseball. But my brother spoke up and said, "Come on, you little Bo Peeps. What are you afraid of? You afraid to play with a hard ball?" We laughed hard. It still got a giggle from us no matter how hip we were. We may have been hip, but we were totally mature. Totally immature. The one greaser in our group perked up. He was always into this talk about genitals and motorcycles. In fact, he wore his leather jacket throughout the summer. He said only a man could stand it, and we thought only a dickhead would even try it. He should have been in the other group when the division came, but he smoked cigarettes and they wouldn't have them. These guys were hard-line Brady Bunch types. One even had a nose like Alice's, but that's another story. So the greaser, whose last name was Forge, again, I thought that was symbolic, said, "Come on, you chicken shits, play us a game. The losers get the shit beat out of them." I looked at my friend Jeff, and he looked at me, wrinkling his nose at Forge. And I said, "No, I want to play for something worth something. You might be a greaser, Forge, but we're hippies. We don't beat no shit out of no people, you asshole. Let's play for a joint." The softball kids looked at each other. Then the one with the slightly crossed eyes and hair lips said, "Oh, forget you guys. All you do is talk revolution and dicks. Is that supposed to be a put down? If we lose, we get your joint." And he grabbed himself between the legs. I immediately went into my best negotiating voice while laughing to myself. No, you don't understand. I mean a smokable joint. You know, pot, grass, blow, weed, marijuana, you know. They turned red, and the youngest towhead blonde whimpered, "We ain't never done that before. We don't smoke that stuff." I quickly realized my mistake, and I said, oh, okay. How about if you lose, you guys buy us all a Hostess fruit pie? Now they could get with that. Okay, the towhead said, and the hair-lipped kid seconded it. Then from the back of the group came the voice of hidden authority. You know, the kid who looks like a Marine. You know, the kid whose brother signed up and wasn't drafted for Vietnam. The kid whose dad's first name was Carol and his best friend Denny. Denny's dad was Shirley. This is true. Of course, the softball kids would have fathers with names like that. You can't make this up. Anyway, the kid says, "You guys can't play baseball with beetle boots and bell bottoms." Well, that really pissed off the greaser Forge, who had heretofore been rather quiet. He said, "Listen, you motherfuckers, I don't wear no tennis shoes. They make my feet stink, and I don't want my effing feet stinking. And when I go to my effing chick's house, now, if you ain't got no effing chick to care about your effing feet, then don't effing tell me not to wear effing beetle boots and bell bottoms to play this here effing game. You bastards are so worried about effing balls, baseballs, footballs, basketballs. Why don't you get some balls and stand up for what you believe in?" I could tell the greaser was going over the deep end. He was never political, but he did have an element of some kind of politics in his voice that day. Still, his ending confused the hell out of me. However, the softball boys must have understood because they shut up and we played. We actually did pretty well. We scored a lot of runs, and Forge, out of his rage and anger, hit every pitch over Mr. Standish's fence for a home run. As everyone learned that day, how important clean smelling feet were to him. No one ever remarked about the greaser's old Beetle boots again. In fact, the last I heard, he was still wearing them into the 21st century. Anyway, we won, and that really pissed those kids off. We ate the fruit pies and talked about all of our baseball memories, which were some of our most important childhood memories. In fact, those were the deepest memories that the effing war in Southeast Asia was eroding from our mind. And then in May of that spring, wham, Kent State. Kent State meant the invasion of Cambodia. I learned about that later too. I heard about the killings in my political science class in high school. It stunned me. The teacher walked in pale and he said, 4 college students were just shot in Ohio. I was angry and I flipped out. All the philosophy and all the pot in the world wouldn't bring these kids back. And then the memory of the neighborhood boy, the one who had signed up for the Marines, was killed in action in December 1965, that all flooded back. And the division grew in the world and in my heart. And I gave up baseball and apple pie. I could have given up grandma, but she quickly changed her position on the war after Kent State. There was hope of healing, but I still can't remove the pain of Kent State, even now, more than 50 years later. I went to the campus for the 20th anniversary of the May 4th killings. My lifelong pal, Jeff, traveled with me in 1990. That was a day of speeches, a march along the route the students took the day while being chased by the Ohio National Guard, and a poetry reading that featured some of America's best known poets. Everyone sat and listened to each other at Brady's Cafe, a longtime traditional hangout at Kent. I spotted the great American poet Alicia Ostreicher in the audience. She approached me after I read to tell me how she appreciated both my poem and my coming down from Detroit. It was a literary Elvis moment for me. I knew her mother-daughter poems about the Vietnam War, and I met several very special people that day who became lifelong friends. Maggie Smith, the wonderfully warm and kind Mage Reagan, his buddy from Cleveland, Daniel Thomas, Larry Smith, who's and Daniel Thompson's book, Famous in the Neighborhood. These folks eventually made me an honorary citizen of Kent. A few years later, Chapter 9 of the Vietnam Veterans of America in Detroit made me an honorary member of their organization by gifting me with a beautiful silk baseball jacket with my name on the front. Since 1990, I have made many trips to Kent State. I have taken my Wayne State students in my Vietnam War through literature class there for a walkthrough and discussion. And I still feel wounded and heavy with sadness when I stand where Jeffrey Miller was shot and his blood ran down the curb. And I still see their 1970 class photos where they're looking more like high school pictures of Jeffrey Miller, Sandra Schur, Allison Krauss, and Bill Schroeder, as if they were my own family members. Elvis, Beatles, Dylan, Vietnam, and Kent State were major turning points for me that I shall never forget. That's it. Thank you. Thanks. So I guess I can try to answer questions. People are writing stuff in here. Michael Madigan, my friend, says that he hopes it will be released as an audio book. Well, maybe, who knows? So what questions do we have? Do we have or comments?
If you would like to, yeah, if you would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand by pushing the reaction button, and then it should say raise hand.
Or any comments?
Or comments, yeah.
You want me to read the whole book? So I guess maybe one question is, Diane DeSillis has her hand raised. Yes, Diane DeSillis.
No, I just want to say and I wrote this in the comment, you're such a good storyteller. I love the way you call people out, and the weaving of history with your personal life, I find very appealing. So I can't wait to read the whole book. And I agree with Michael, it should be an audio book. Absolutely.
Well, thank you. And thanks for those comments. I thought of something when you were mentioning the storytelling. Yeah, I think one of the things in the way that I write, I was thinking Jim Daniels read the whole book. I mean, in its rough stage. And one of his comments was, I don't know, it sounds exactly like you. So that was a good comment. I like that comment because that's what I wanted. I wanted to feel, realistic and honest and true. And because it is,
Yeah.
Somebody else? Step right up. Yes, Jerry, brother.
Thank you for this reading. Here's my question. If you were going to make a soundtrack for this thing, have you thought about that at all? Because when you were reading, I kept thinking, there's this song and this song and this song. I had a DJ playing in my imagination the whole time you were reading along. Maybe you should release a recording to go with this thing. You think so?
Yeah, no, I mean, you have a really good point there. One of the ideas, and we actually tried this the year that I had that Murray Jackson, you put on a presentation, and I had Ted Nagy join me and Frankie the K, and I think Lou too on drums. And we sort of did the 1967 chapter, which is Jimi Hendrix, and we kind of laced it with various Hendrix songs along the way. So the idea is eventually the book can be done in reading form like that and have the music behind it. And probably I will make a playlist as I've done for Respect and Heaven Was Detroit. But you're right. I was thinking of that even doing this reading, but I know sometimes it's really hard on Zoom to layer stuff.
Well, again, thanks for a great reading, and I'll wait for the book, but I'll also be staying tuned for the recording.
All right.
Even, you think?
And Jerry was there in the early part of some of this stuff with some of these guys I grew up with who are still alive and well. So brother is still hanging out there and still hanging in.
It was good to see him back.
Yeah. He's back. Thanks, Jerry. Somebody else? Carolyn, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about me?
I was wondering, in writing, chapters, particularly ones that kind of go back to the neighborhood, and you do such a great job of like creating them on the page. Did you find that the writing of your memoir ended up getting you back in touch with people that you had perhaps long been out of touch with? Just curious.
Yeah. That's a really good question with that. I know writing it, took me back to a time where there were some fun and good things definitely that took place. I mean, I am very grateful for my life, but some of it was dredging up, because each chapter goes through different parts. I mean, there's a chapter on sort of being a house husband and raising my kids, especially during the summer months with our profession, that I think is pretty funny. And then there's growing up with the Beatles. A lot of you have heard my Beatles story, and I've done that with it. I've taken that story that I wrote back in '84 and first read at Wayne State in our little colloquium. I took that story and inserted about 27 Beatles songs into it, and then got musicians, and it's become quite a choreographed show of music with a video of a screen behind us with images that go along with it. And so that's something that can be done with some of these. And but I'd have to really think about going back in touch with stuff. I know I can tell one funny story that I was doing a book signing from Heaven Was Detroit. And this guy came up to me around here. I live and have always lived in St. Clair Shores. And I was at the library in St. Clair Shores. And the kid came up to get his book signed. Or he's not a kid anymore. But he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Nah, not really." And then he took his glasses off. He goes, "I'm Bobby. I'm Bobby, dude. And, you know, we were friends when you were 5. I said, "Bobby, look at us. Taking your glasses off isn't doing anything to help me here." But that's one thing I can tell you. So that got me back in touch with Bobby for a minute.
ML, there's a question a comment in the chat from Jeremy Peters. He says that my pre-academic career was music licensing, and he'd be happy to help you with rights and with the recordings.
Oh, wow. Well, that's really good. I'm just reaching down for my little, this is my dog, Stella McCartney. She's getting a little antsy here. Yeah, well, you know what, Jeremy, just, you know, send me an email and touch base like that, because that's another part of different chapters in here. I have, people know that I've done the poetry book of poems about Detroit music and included several lyrics that I thought were, you know, were appropriate to fit that theme. By a number of people: Fats Domino, Robbie Robertson, Paul Simon. There's a bunch of folks. I did it also with the Working Words book. Bob Dylan was in it. And so in the Bob Dylan chapter, there's definitely mention of that experience and so forth. But the Dylan's quick story was, I wanted to have them in that book. I wanted some poems. I really just wanted Woody Guthrie's final words to Woody Guthrie that were on the back of one of his albums. And so I knew someone who was a friend of his, and the friend must have told him to call me. So his music licensing guy, Joel Rosen, called me, and he said, "Yeah, Bob said you could have anything you want for free." And I said, "What?" You know, and he goes, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I really want the last words of Woody Guthrie, whatever the formal title of that is." And he goes, "Is that it?" And I was actually at my desk at Wayne State when we used to have telephones. And, you know, and I said, I had to think real quick. I said, "Oh yeah, can I have the Death of Hattie Carroll?" And yeah, sure. Bob said anything you want. So that's a little bit of my experience with Bob Dylan. He hasn't come over for dinner yet lately, though. Let's see. So there are people with hands raised. Why don't you unmute hand raised people, and let's.
Hi, it's me, Susan Messer.
Yeah, Susan. You know, I was
Haven't
just
seen
thinking
you for
about you
so-
the other day. I was.
You what?
I was thinking about you.
Oh,
I wondered what you were up to. In
well,
Oak Park.
now I just am so glad to hear you read. I don't think I've ever heard you read your own work before. I've known you only as a supporter of the work of others, including mine. And I just want to say in addition to everything on ML's list of credits, he's such a supporter of other artists and writers. So anyway, I loved the reading. It was so fresh. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say, it's so fresh. It just feels like it's just unleashing everything, and such a wonderful mix of pain and joy and youth and age, and that whole idea of giving up baseball because of these world events. It was just beautiful. And I'm so glad that William Colburn told me about this event. I wouldn't have known
Oh,
otherwise.
fabulous. Well, I'm glad to see you because Susan Messer wrote a great novel entitled I want to say
Grand River and Joy.
Grand River and Joy.
You,
Did I get it right?
you did.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that novel. I've used it in my Detroit classes, and folks might want to pick that up. U of M published it, and it's really it totally gets into the '67 situation, the Grandy Ballroom. It's got a lot of layers in it too.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So check
But that's
that
not
out.
why I came here today. I came here.
No, I know, but
and I'm so
I
glad I did. And
Yeah.
and can you see John Lennon there behind
I
me?
do see John. Are you kidding? Yeah.
So you take care of yourself.
Okay,
and keep
thank you.
writing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And good to see you. Someone else's hand is raised. 4 participants with raise. I can't see the hand raises. Anybody know? Are they waiting for me to call on them? Wait, I just saw a hand go up.
It won't let me
Oh.
unmute.
You're
You got
unmuted. You're unmuted. You can
Okay.
talk.
Hey, ML,
Yes.
I
Why don't
just
we
want to tell
rehearse
you, to me, the sign of a good book is when you want to hear more, like a good song or a good movie. Congrats.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lou. Lou's one of my drummers. He drums in the Beatle show and in what we're doing now as a side thing. So thanks, Lou. Appreciate
Sure,
it.
man.
Andrea, did you have a question? It's like a silent movie. You got to unmute. Andrea, unmute. Now I can.
Now we go. Hi.
Hi.
You know, your stories are remarkable. And, you know, having worked with young adults my whole life, I think is, you know, the stories like Kent State coming from somebody like you who had such a firsthand experience, instead of them just reading a blurb in a history book, is so pertinent, especially right now while our country is going through so much turbulence. For young people to understand, we've been down some of these roads before, and it's important to pay attention and maybe make sure these things don't happen again. I know that Kent State was a major chapter in teaching history, and the kids did respond strong to it, for which I'm grateful. But these stories coming from you are so important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Very kind.
ML,
Yes.
I think I'm in next in the queue here. So
Go ahead. I love the cue.
shouting out from the San Francisco Bay Area. We're coming up, ML and I are coming up on our 40th anniversary of meeting. I was a student of his at Wayne State close to 40 years ago. And immediately my teacher, my professor became one of my best friends, and I've held him and his wife and his family hostage for close to 40 years now of being my besties and traveling. And ML changed my life, opened up my life, taught me so much, shared so much, boosted me, uplifted me along the way. And he's still today, he's my brother. He's my guru. He's my replacement father. And guide and best friend. And I'm just so excited you're getting the memoir down. Once you said I'm working on the memoir, I'm like, let's go, let's go. I want this as an audiobook. I'm one of your biggest groupies and fans. And all I can say is no pressure, but there's more than one memoir in you. So, you know, just keep rolling.
Yeah, no, I know. But once I do this was kind of hard going back through a lot of this. When you, I mean, there's not anything, well, it depends. I guess shocking is relevant to folks, but, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, I wanted to tell the truth about everything. So, and be clear about that in it and not to kind of gloss over stuff. So it really, while it might seem just in this little talk, like, oh, this is a book where ML Liebler drops names. It's really not that. I've just been really fortunate to be able to have contact and work with a lot of my heroes. I mean, what can I say? it's as bizarre to me as it may sound to someone else, to be friends and good friends with a lot of these people. Anyway, so thank you, Lisa. That was very kind. Very kind. Thanks, Lisa. And I'll see you in England. We're all going to England in March, so I'm Omicron.
Okay, ML, can you hear
Yes,
Linda?
Linda.
I also wanted to say how much I loved how you described your buddies. There was so much really love and empathy. And you were mentioning the names. You were saying, oh, I hope, so-and-so doesn't sue me. All of it was done with so much really care. And, we all know people from our past, kids that we grew up with, the names that stay with us, and just like Forge the Greaser, or the guy who looked like a Marine before he was a Marine. I loved that part of the reading, as much as the historical significance of Kent State was the significance of the heart that you brought to these characters that, that enrich the story. And I just love that. I really, really admire that a lot.
Oh, thanks, Linda. I appreciate that. Let's see. Isaac Pickell asked me a question I've always wanted to ask you, and I hope the poetics of memory influence new poets in their writing and maybe more importantly, their lives. I'm not sure. Are you out there, Isaac? You see how I fashioned your last name now? I'm making you famous.
I heard that, it's been a long
Isn't it Pickell?
Everyone,
that dawned on me. It's not pickle, is it?
No, it's not.
Because you can't make that up. But what were you asking anyway?
I'm just, all of the, not only the poetry you write, but now sort of this prose work, it always seems like you're reaching back to sort of like find something for the future rather than just remembering for the sake of remembering. And, I wanted to follow that hunch and see sort of how you envision that process working, and sort of what your hopes were for younger people reading your work or hearing your work.
That's good. Well, for young people reading it, I think what Andrea said would be the ultimate if they can pick up a little bit of personal or a little history through personal stories, American history. But I still like to connect everything. I mean, I teach and operate under the Marvin Gayeism, everything is everything. And I do think everything connects and in ways. I mean, sometimes, you might have to go out a bit to connect it. But I'm always looking at that sort of thing. How does this connect? Like one of the questions, and I don't know if I've answered it. I don't think I have, but overall, I've been asking myself, okay, so what is the overall theme of this memoir? If I'm teaching it like I teach people's books and stories and poems, in other words, what's going on here? What's the big story? What's the big theme? I don't have an answer to that. I'm going to keep thinking of it. Maybe there is no answer to it. Maybe it's like a Zen koan. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just there. But anyway, so yeah, what Andrea said, I think would be the ultimate, is people can get a little history from personal stories, American history, because it's not really taught anymore, and or was it ever? I don't know. Somebody else?
Hello, ML.
Yeah.
Hey,
one of my early publishers.
Yes, sir, and one of mine too.
Yeah.
But I appreciated your handling of Kent State. I was at Kent State, both my wife and I, in 1970. And I've tried to write about it, and it seems you just can't put it down. And it is fragmented, and it is deep. And you captured that. And mentioning Neil Young was appropriate too. That song, "For Dead in Ohio," just always brings back that deep feeling of that time. And, you're a great poet and a performer, and that's coming across. And it's coming across in the prose too, I hope. So
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
wish you the best, man.
Thank you, Larry. It's so good to see you. I was thinking about Larry too, because something it might have been that Afterlife series, the new season, but there's a scene towards the end where they're all on a carousel going around, all the characters. And Larry had the Magic Poetry Band down to Sandusky, Ohio. And it was the most interesting and fun reading ever. We would have a couple of poets who would read, and then a bell would ring and everybody would jump back on a carousel. It was like a carousel museum.
That's right.
Is that still there, Larry?
The Carousel Museum is still there. Yeah.
Wow. Wasn't that a wild night?
That was great. That was great. You belong on a carousel.
It was just so cool, man. It's like, read some poems, ding, ding, ding. Everybody jumps on the carousel, get off, read some more poems. Great, great idea. I'll have to buy a carousel so we can make that happen in Detroit. Let's see. Katie's hand is Katie.
ML.
Hey, there you are.
Here I am. You can. So good to see you. You are a rock.
What is this?
God, a rock god.
This is your life with Ralph Edwards, or
what?
Oh, go ahead.
It is your life. Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's so true. Oh my God. I have two. I'll be quick. Because I know I can just send you a text anytime. But do you have two quick ones? Do you have a time frame for publication? And like, when can I get my hands on this? And then also, is prison in there? You knew I had to ask the question. Is there a prison story or a Fielding story or some kind of related, or an Atticus story or something related?
You know, there could be, now that you're mentioning that. Yeah.
I want to throw a wrench. If there's not, there's not, because there's
no, but that's important. I know I've been to jail for justice a few times, if that's mentioned in there, but no one brought me a writing program. But Katie worked with me and Jason Schinder at the National Writer's Voice, which is a very important part of my life. And she became a prison teacher and an activist for prison writing and you know, for people who are incarcerated. Are you still doing that? I imagine you are, right?
Yep.
So Katie started that, and I've done a fair amount of that too. But we had a mutual friend. Some of the people that are online here probably have heard of Fielding Dawson. And he became a friend of mine, and he was a friend to Katie because of her research. And then another friend was Minnie Bruce Pratt, who became and is a friend, a really good friend of mine still. And so she did great work in writing and research. And you got your PhD in that, didn't you, Katie? Yeah. So
I took over for Janine and Fielding. I took over for them also at Sing Sing. So so our paths have crossed. We've got multiple threads that we've sewn together, you and I, over many years.
I know. I can remember us boxing
Everything's
stuff up.
Connected.
Boxing things up. Yeah, right. And racing over the George Washington Bridge to the not Patterson, but what is that thing? The famous reading series over there in New Jersey?
In Patterson?
No, in New Jersey.
Dodge.
Dodge. Driving up and down 80 to the Dodge. Yeah, well, gosh, it's good to see you.
So good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks. And plus, we were in Northern California teaching people how to start writers' voices, which was a trip too. Anyway, somebody else? I'm just looking at the questions.
Apparently not. So ML, I think that Jackie will have a little speech to give you. But one of the things I want to tell you about is that there is David Marola. He is a sociologist. He's now the chair of sociology, in fact. He went to Kent State, and And that experience at Kent State has shaped his entire academic life. He is very strong on social justice. He's an extremely personable young man. So if you're ever looking for a friend at Wayne who has the Kent State connection, you might contact David Marola.
Okay, that's great. Great tip. Great tip. Well, I want to thank everyone too for, and I didn't mean for this and didn't want this to turn into ML Liebler, this is your life. I appreciate all the kind comments. Of course, it's wonderful. But it's better to see everybody, and see some people I haven't seen in a while. Like Lisa, who was my student 40 years ago. She hasn't changed. Look at me. I didn't look like this then, Lisa. I had long, dark, no, I didn't. Anyway, thank you guys. Back to you, Walter or Jacqueline.
Hi, thank you everyone for attending this talk, and thank you, ML. Thank you so much for that wonderful story. And honestly, I think I speak for all of us to say we're all excited for you to release the work, and when you do. The Humanity Center wanted to honor you and thank you for giving this talk, but also working with us for so many years with this journal with our logo on it, as well as like a caddy you can keep all of your writing tools in.
Cool.
Yes, and
Yes.
so this talk was actually recorded and will be edited and put up on our YouTube shortly. And you can keep updated with all of our past talks and upcoming talks there, as well as our website.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, Jacqueline and Walter, that there's a lot of people on here who don't even know about, I don't think, this series. There's a lot who do, but for those who don't, there's usually a couple of talks a week, and they've been on Zoom. Some of them are live or were live. And I think this link works pretty much for all of them. Jacqueline, is that true? Do you guys do a new link every time or no?
No, it's the same passcode and link for every talk for the 2021-22 school year.
Good. You should check it out because there's a lot of cool talks that I've learned a lot being connected with the Humanities Center, and I'm happy about that. Grateful.
Yes, we would love to see you all again.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for attending today. And
thank you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.